So I'm Danna Wren. I'm the Senior Director for Academic Technology for Missouri Online. And I'd like to introduce David Reid. So David, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm David Reid. I'm the Director of Solutions Architecture and Analytics here at Missouri Online.
And so Missouri Online is actually for all of the campuses within the University of Missouri system. So we're a centralized support service that handles online student services, as well as things like Canvas and its associated technologies and learning data and analytics. So what did we do? We put together one canvas from our 4 instances, campus instances of Canvas. And so that's what we were working on, putting together those data flows. Why did we do it? Well, because we really wanted a unified, very consistent reporting across the 4 campuses. As you can imagine, with individual campuses, we have all different kinds of data definitions and just different setups. And so we really wanted to make that more consistent. We had system-wide support from one office, our office. So we wanted to make it easier for us to support our faculty, staff, and students. We were able to access pretty significant savings on technology costs. Thank you, Unison, for that, by having one Canvas instead of 4 different instances of Canvas. And we also were able to really facilitate the collaboration. So there was a long desire for, more cross-campus collaboration and collaborative programs and things like that. And there was really no way to do that when you had separate Canvas instances. Students were always confused about where to go, and it just wasn't very consistent. So having one Canvas really helped us facilitate that. So we had some significant challenges. As you guessed, we have 4 different SIS data sources. So all of our student enrollments are in different SISs with the campuses. We had very different business rules. In addition, we had a pandemic. So yep, everything was on fire. So that was presented some difficulty as well. We also, this was a new use for the UDP. The UDP was used to receive data and to report on that data from Canvas, but not to actually load Canvas. And so we had some things that we needed to work through there. We also had multiple entities across the system that we had to work with, everybody from HR to information technology to the registrars. So there was just a tremendous amount of coordination. So I'll transition it to David, because this is where we get into the architecture of what we did, and he is the expert at that.
Yeah, so thanks, Dana. So yeah, so here's the problem that was kind of before us. We had 4 different SIS instances, and like Dana said, we had to load those into one Canvas. And then we are also exploring Unison membership. So we also had a project to go to where, well, we have to take these same 4 SIS instances and loaded it into the UDP. So we had discussions about, well, do we get multiple ones? How do we do this? And then as we're looking at this, right, we see that there's some potential issues here. And we also have, talked to other institutions, and, part of it is, getting the UDP all synced up between SIS and Canvas is kind of a chore, right? You see the 2 yellow bubbles here on the screen, right? Those all have to be kept in sync. And so we were a little concerned about, well, if Campus makes a change, let's say to the processes where they want to load their Canvas from, then we also have to make sure the process that updates the UDP is also updated as well, because we want our analytics coming out of the UDP, right, to match what is actually going on in Canvas, and we don't want things to break, yada, yada, yada. So if we go to the next slide, we got an idea. It was like, well, what if we use the UDP as the source of truth for Canvas? So it's kind of like borrowing from the reverse ETL model, right? Where if we take and use the UDP as our warehouse and we load it up from the 4 instances from our SIS systems and take advantage of the UCDM to do the mappings of the data into those entities, well, those entities are actually all that the Canvas actually needs to get loaded. And the benefit to this is that our UDP is always in sync with LMS and SIS, right? Because any changes we make to the UDP automatically flow into Canvas. So we don't have to worry about, any rogue logical process that goes through and breaks, breaks our integration or our analytical reports. And yeah, we can go to the next slide here. And so, I mean, to be honest, what this is success, right? I mean, we wouldn't be here presenting if we didn't have some successes. And we'll get to some of the challenges that we faced and did as well. But basically, as we've talked about, right, we really liked it because we had a unified set of business logic, which went into both of our operational systems to do that. We leveraged the UCDM heavily to engage campuses on the conversations of how to map their data and their values coming from, a highly, granular SIS system to a nice standard, option set based UDP. The examples we always use, instructional modality, right? Each campus had their own, coding for that. And the nice thing is we can say, hey, here are the options that the UDP allows. Take your codes and map it to these option sets. Again, from an analytics perspective, that's fantastic because now we can do apples to apples reporting across all 4 instances because we know what an online course is. We don't have to know what the individual code is used in PeopleSoft at each of the campuses to do online because we have mapped that already. It also elevated analytics as a core priority. So it wasn't that the UDP is just this warehouse system that sits off in the corner that only the analysts are concerned about. And then everybody else is all concerned about Canvas and Canvas operates. Now they're basically, if one goes down, if UDP doesn't work, then Canvas doesn't work to some degree. I mean, it's not really that case, but we'll talk about that in part of the challenges. But the nice thing is that we don't have to worry about this side system or whatever, or it's not, like I say, a side priority. It is now front and center. It's integral to how we do business in Canvas. And the other thing we liked is it basically takes our process to get it fully cloud-based. Once we take the job from our PeopleSoft, we use Power Center, that job to get into the UDP. Once it's in the UDP, everything else from that point in our process becomes cloud-based. Whether it's we have our own GCP instance locally, which we run our Canvas loader in, and then obviously know that Canvas is AWS as well. So we like that, getting everything cloud-based and taking advantage of the scalability and different advantages of the cloud. So if we go to the next slide, you can see a little bit more. We're going to break down some of those successes. And, who doesn't love a good architecture diagram, right? So here's our kind of well, maybe some don't love, but I love architecture diagrams. So this kind of shows you what we just talked about. Everything in gray is our on-premise stuff. We load the UDP in the purple stuff, right? The blue stuff is all our cloud-based stuff. And that's where we allow instructors to manage their courses. So they can manage enrollments, they can request courses, combo courses. We have a special app that's all cloud-based that they run, it combos, and then it is all loaded into Canvas. And then of course, we know all the Canvas stuff is backfilled into the UDP. Again, so we like this because as you can see, there's one singular purple arrow coming out of our on-prem gray box, except you can say, well, David, there's also a green arrow. That was one of the challenges, right? As we got into it, we realized that there isn't attributes for everything we possibly needed. So the green arrow is kind of a little shadow system where we had to take and say, well, there is no appropriate attribute in this entity. So we have to kind of load it off to the side here because we needed that for the Canvas request system to do. So initially we were hoping it was just going to be, the purple stream to do it. But as you can see, we had to put in an extra green box to load because, the UDP doesn't contain all the data that we potentially needed. If we go to the next slide, I think this is the UCDM mapping. Yeah, and this was fantastic. This was a great conversation starter using the UCDM, using those entities and basically talking to the campuses and saying, whatever granularity you have on your campus, that's great. You can still report on that, but we're going to need to report system-wide for online courses and for courses using Canvas. So here's the mapping. It was a great conversation to have to say, this is the mapping we need to do. And then we can hook up our Tableau reports directly to the UDP, and all that data is mapped at that level that we need it, so we can do some comparison, apples to apples, without having to understand, our analysts don't have to understand how everything is coded in the individual SIS systems, which is a great benefit to us. And then this also creates, if we go to the next slide, some abstraction layers that we can use. So the purple boxes, right, are our abstraction layers. And the benefits to this is theoretically, right, we can swap out our PeopleSoft for something else, or we could swap out Canvas for something else, right? Because we've abstracted all this stuff out to the UDP, and we could take the yellow box, replace it with something else, remap that system into Unison UDP entities, and then theoretically, right, and I always use the term theoretically, but all the downstream reports, analytics, the loading, et cetera, all works, right? Because everything is based on this data model that is provided in the UDP. So we thought that was kind of cool. And again, this kind of graphic represents that, analytics kind of represent the core of that as well, because it's not a side system off to the side. So now you're probably wondering, well, that sounds great, David, but I know you had challenges. Yeah, we did. So we're going to get a little into some of the details there that we had. So we had 4 challenges we're going to talk about today. Actually, the last one we no longer have, right? Thank you, Unison, they now have multi loads of the UDP, so we can ingest at multiple frequencies, which is fantastic. When we started, it was a singular load, but now we can do it multiple times, which is great. As you might expect, we had campuses who wanted to get enrollments pushed in more than once a day, so we are able to do that now through that. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Unison's been a great partner on this. I think I saw Tracy on here. She's been fabulous for answering our questions. She's probably tired of answering all of our questions and stuff as we did that, but she was great. And again, everybody at Unison was great. They didn't pay me to say that, by the way, but really our experience was great. But now we're going to get to some of the challenge we have. The first one is the feedback loop. And that is because not every entity has a key map, which allows you to see. So most of the entities, right, we look at the SIS, internal ID. If you're familiar with the UDP structure, that lets us know what data is coming from our PeopleSoft instances, our PeopleSoft data. But like course section enrollments doesn't have that. There's some reasons behind that. So what we were finding is students that were dropped out of our SIS systems weren't getting dropped in Canvas, because when the backfill happened, actually, I think this is the next slide, Dana. When the backfill happened, it just put the loading script saw that the student was enrolled or should be enrolled. So what we had to do was we had to use one of the fields in course section enrollments. I think it's something like credit hours or something like that, that we use that's only populated from the SIS. And so that helped us stop the feedback loop, right? Because we basically said, if that's a null value, then that's a backfill from Canvas and we can ignore the record. So we thought about what would be a better solution. I get it. There's some complexities because Canvas can allow multiple enrollments. So, this is not a trivial problem. One potential solution we maybe had was if we added an attribute to that entity to be SIS defined. Essentially, Unison does the processing to say, hey, I see this in the SIS feed, but I don't see it in the data coming back from Canvas. And then it's marked as SIS defined or null, which is essentially what we're doing again with the field. It just kind of names it that. So it's a little bit easier if anybody else had that same problem. And the next challenge is, the ingestion monitoring. Okay, so this was a big challenge for us because, as you might guess, we're very, very interested in whether or not the ingests happen in the UDP, every day or twice a day is how we're loading now. And there really isn't a way to do this at present. So the way we've done it is we've kind of have our own workaround. We look at the file we send Unison, and then we kind of pull the UDP and look for differences, right? And if there's a difference in let's say the enrollments, then we kind of know maybe something's amiss there. And so we trigger a ticket to Unison to do that. But one of the better solutions, perhaps, that we've actually talked about with to Unison about is exposing a logging table of the UDP, which provides the last time an entity or key map table was refreshed. So right when they do their and they use Airflow and they run all their jobs, at the very end, right, when they flip from A to B or B to A or however that process works, then something is logged in a table, right? And then we can just pull that table to see, oh, we see enrollments was updated on this date. So at the very least, it's a little bit better for us to do that. That also helps us from the analytical perspective, because then we can use those refresh dates, right, on our Tableau reports to give a data freshness update, saying the data was updated based on this time as well, to do that. So that would be one potential way to do that. The other ways that we've discussed is having, you know, different kind of notifications coming out of Airflow, or, you know, webhooks that we could, you know, subscribe to see if certain key things are done or whatever. But the table seemed to be a pretty straightforward potential way to do that. And the last challenge we're going to talk about is, this is what we've already talked about a little bit. This is just granularity, and this is a common, you know, challenge when you're using a common model, right, that we're all trying to do. And that is our campus has special attributes that aren't in the model, and nor should they be, right, because they're specific to campuses. And so this is why we had to do that shadow CSV file that we push from Power Center up to our own GCP and then join it back to the UDP to do that. I get it. This is kind of an anti-pattern, right, that we're trying to put on extra data outside the model. But that is something that, you know, we had to kind of code around. And so, you know, one idea, and you know, we're not saying this is the best solution, but, you know, is perhaps to allow just a generic JSON field within the UDP, right, for certain entities, let's say a person, where you could stuff attributes, right, in that field, in that custom field. And so obviously that custom field will be different per, you know, institution or, you know, consortium member, right? Because, you know, Penn State's going to use that differently than we do. But the nice thing would be is we could shove additional attributes for, let's say, courses, people, enrollments that we potentially needed in that field, and not, you know, break the model too much. That might raise some concerns or whatever if we did that, but we're just throwing out ideas here to say based on our experience. So I think that's pretty much it. That's our walkthrough of what we did and how we're doing. Like I say, Dana mentioned we started this last when was this, Dana? I can't even remember. But it's been running for a while, and we've had some really good success in doing that, in loading our Canvas instances from this. And like I say, we realized the benefits of our UDP being in sync. So our analysts really like that as well, because it's you know, basically guaranteed to be, you know, accurate data from Canvas, you know, beyond the, you know, day or so delay and, you know, the backfill from Canvas until Canvas gets, you know, 2.0 data where it's refreshed more frequently. So we'll just stop there. That's kind of our spiel. But if you have any questions, Dana and I would be happy to answer any questions you had. And if there's no questions, then I don't think we'll make anybody stay. I mean, but if you want to, you can email Dana or I if you have additional questions, or, you know, about any of our experiences with doing it. We'd be happy to ask. You know, if you just think that we're crazy, that's fine too. Just don't email me that. I don't need a reminder of that kind of thing. But yeah, we're happy. If you have any questions about any of our experiences, we're happy to let you know. And we appreciate everybody for coming out and kind of listening to us to talk about what we did.
Yes, thank you, everyone.